Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. John Copenhaver is back in the house.
Hey Al, how you doing?
Well, you know, I'm hiding out in the Great White North because I don't want to cross the border now.
I know.
Even with a green card, they'll arrest you and send you out. Like that German guy that just happened to too. He was arrested and thrown.
It's utter insanity. It's just insanity. Well, I'm glad you're in Canada, and I wish I were there too.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of weird. You know, this whole world's changed. But you were at Left Coast Crime Butt, and I didn't make it this year because of the not traveling. It kind of kept me away. How was it?
It was great. I was very busy being the Toastmaster, so I had to do a lot of public speaking. And not just utterly embarrassing myself, which I think maybe I didn't entirely embarrass myself, but yeah, it was a blast.
I'm sure it's fine, because even when you're not the Toastmaster, you are.
Right. Yeah, I'm just like, why not make it really public? Just, you know.
Yeah, and you won awards too, didn't you? And aren't you like, the new winner of everything?
I did. Yes, I've won everything. No, I did win the Lefty for Best Historical, so that was a very exciting moment. In fact, since I was doing all this Toastmastering, sort of stage management, etc., I forgot to be nervous about the award, and when it kind of came time, I was like, oh, wait, we're announcing the awards. That's supposed to happen tonight.
But that makes it better in a way, because then it's not.
Yeah, you're not jittery and, getting in your head about it.
Did you have to sleep with someone to get it, or what?
Me,
no,
actually. It was me. Yeah, but he took one for the team, and ultimately it was worth it.
Krista, you're such a good sport.
Oh, there you go. See, I always wondered about that, because, these awards, and you go to the shows, and these people win and stuff. Like, who, is it all about something going on in the back room here, or what,
That's very mysterious. But Krista did me a solid, so thank you,
Krista.
Oh!
Anytime.
Wow, we're
here to talk about Krista, not me. Enough about me.
Well, one leads to another, and I mean, if you're banging her, then we might as well find. No. So Christa Faust, is that it? That's it. And your new book, it's out today, I believe, the 18th. I don't even know where I am. It's called The Get Off, and it's Angel Dare series, book 3. So what's going on here?
I've been, living with this woman in my head for 20 plus years now. And it was kind of a long, interesting journey to get her to the end, but I did. And it's out. And, go to your local indie bookstore and get hooked up.
Well, but, when you've been living with someone like that in your head for so long, what happens now that the book's done?
Well, I have this kind of funny thing where you're working on a novel. It's like you're in couples counseling with your wife, and you're really trying to make it work, but every ass that walks by looks amazing. So you got your head in this novel, and like every little shimmer of a new idea, you're like, ooh, say, and keeps turning your head left and right, and you got to keep turning it back and go, no. You gotta eat the pussy in front of you. Can I swear? Was that a horrible thing to say? You can edit that out. But you gotta deal with what's in front of you. And, that was a challenge. But now that I have finished and it's out there, now I can chase all those butterflies and, hook up with all these ideas for one night and see if they have legs.
So now that you've eaten the pussy, you can move on.
I'll move on to eating the next pussy, obviously. It's like a never-ending thing with these women.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so listen, so what's the series about then? So you've had this woman in your head, and this is book 3. What's the premise of going on with this woman? What's she making you do?
Well, the Angel is a former porn star, sex worker, who is, as is a common trope in the hard-boiled world, she's out of the game. She's managing young talent, and she gets invited back for one last scene. And it's that classic, the thief is going to pull one big score, and that's going to be the one. And of course, everything goes to hell in a handbasket, and it's that kind of leads us down the road of the classic hard-boiled story. So she, in the first book, gets mixed up with human trafficking and Romanian gangsters. And then in the second book, she finds herself in the witness protection program and gets mixed up with mixed martial artists and the fight game. And in this final book, she is drawn into the world of rodeo bullfighters. Now, when I say bullfighters, a lot of people think ole, like Matador, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what people outside the rodeo world refer to as clowns, that these are the guys who distract the bull from killing the rider after he gets off, hence the title, The Get Off. And I think the through line between those three books is that I have a real fascination with jobs in which you use your physicality and your body to entertain someone else. So if you're an adult film star, you are using your body as a venue of entertainment for others, regardless of your gender. And same thing in the fight game. Again, regardless of gender. You're up there, you're taking a punishment, you're using your physicality as a form of entertainment. And ditto rodeo. There's an animal involved as well, but it's also you proving your mettle, showing how physically strong you are, how much suffering you can endure. And I'm here to tell you, having spent 2 years traveling around with those rodeo guys, it's a lot.
I was going to say, where did you get the inspiration for rodeo guys? Is this where John comes in?
You said you weren't going to talk about that. Cut that part out. Cut that. Yeehaw. Anyway, actually, it sort of evolved out of a conversation with Benjamin Whitmer. And we were talking about the movie Junior Bonner, which is a famous rodeo film from the 60s. And I was kind of obsessed with the movie The Misfits, which also has a rodeo theme to it. And we started talking about, it's the same thing again. And once you start noticing patterns, that sort of pattern recognition part of the brain kicks in, and you start seeing these echoes everywhere of that same theme. And so it was just such a natural fit for the series. When I originally went out to meet people and get to know this world, I thought I was going to write about the bull riders, but I became so intrigued by the notion of people whose job it is to pull the danger towards themselves and away from others physically and potentially put their life on the line in order to protect someone else. And that became the central theme of that final novel.
What you were talking about, how the characters draw the danger toward them.
Yes. So I was originally planning to write about bull riders, but when I actually went to these rodeos and met guys who were involved in that world, I was much more fascinated and interested by the bullfighters, aka clowns, rodeo clowns, although don't call them that, because that's a whole different thing. But the guys whose job it is to draw the bull's attention and pull the bull away from the fallen rider by bringing the danger towards themselves, something in that dynamic felt like the perfect way to end the series thematically. And that was what gave me the idea that ultimately became The Get Off.
I'm curious about sort of just in terms of the pulp noir genre, this idea of kind of drawing danger towards you. It feels very like probably a broader trope that you're plugging into. Is that true? Do you have sort of direct inspirations for that? After all, your character is Angel Dare, which feels it feels a bit baked into the name. Where do you get your inspiration?
Well, yes, absolutely. I've been just a pulp enthusiast for decades, and I love those wonderful classic hard-boiled tropes like the thief who's going to do one last score and sacrificing yourself in order to save someone else. But I would say that trope of sacrifice is even bigger than pulp. I mean, that's a very kind of universal, almost like crossing all cultures and boundaries. That's a really classic trope. And I think that's what gives it the kind of gravitas that if you want to read it on the surface just as pulp, you can. And I don't begrudge anybody that, because I do that too. But it's kind of the way to sneak in these deeper themes by having it be simple and pulpy and easy to follow on the surface. But it allows you to dig into some chewier stuff, maybe even without the reader fully realizing it.
Yeah, it seems like a really compelling strategy. You teach students in an MFA program, and always sort of, I guess, banging my drum a little bit for the power that like popular genres and pulp have this chance to hook a wide audience. You'd be really gripping, but then have all the stuff going on underneath them. And it feels very much in your series. It's certainly, I could tell from this one and Money Shot, which I loved, that you're after that. Like, yeah, it's going to be fun, but if you want to think about more, there's more here to be thought about. To what degree is that sort of by design, or is that something that just sort of happens as you're writing?
Well, I've always done that. And I think that if you're a queer person and existing in the world, you learn very early to look for like messages in a bottle, right? Or secret, frequencies that only we can hear, and growing up feeling like, even in New York City, like, wow, I'm kind of different from a lot of people that I knew. And, I found a lot of these kind of hidden messages in cheesy horror movies, from back in the day that were dismissed as just melodrama or unimportant, silly rubber monster. But that ability to distract with what's perceived as lowbrow and then secretly kind of pass notes under the table to people who are tuned into those frequencies. I think I was sort of used to that from a young age. And so it is intentional, but to a degree, it's also just kind of what I do, like breathing. It comes naturally to me.
Do you think that there are better sort of popular forms for communicating that subtextual stuff, or do you think, or there's something about that crime novel or pulp crime novel that really allows that sort of subtextual coded communication, I guess is the best word?
Yeah, well, I feel like, when you are dealing with monsters, whether they be human or inhuman, when you're dealing with marginalized people, criminals, street people, sex workers, these are all people who live in this kind of shadowy underworld, like Harry Fabian in Night in the City. He's like this little rat in this urban jungle, just trying to scrape out his own little existence. And I think that, when you look at the big picture of where did the main characters, main tropes, main ideas of crime fiction break down, they do tend to have this kind of, marginalized, edgy, outsider POV. And even the traditional stuff, I would argue that it seems like people fit in on the surface. But if you scratch that surface, you can see that people in these drawing rooms with all this polite language and everybody is very drinking their tea with their pinky out. But you look deeper, there's more underneath there. So I really just think that it's kind of like a natural way for us to communicate with each other, regardless of genre.
So your character, Angel, do you actually hear the voice then, and do you picture her? Do you actually have an image of who this character is?
Very much so.
And you do. And so does your character talk to you then as well?
Well, I tend to write in a very close first person, so when I'm telling a story, I tell it as if you walked into a bar and sat down next to the character. and they're telling you about something that happened. And I do this for very different types of characters, like, you know, the short story that I just wrote for the Queer Icons anthology. It's a very similar, close first person, totally different voice. Couldn't be more different. So I think that because I have this tendency to use that little stylistic trick, it does feel almost like an actor, like you're embodying a character that isn't you, and it gives you this kind of, I don't know, schizophrenic double vision. You let this person almost possess you or ride you, you know, like a voodoo spirit. And I think that's what people respond to, is that intimacy, that closeness.
Does that happen to you when you're driving?
No.
Just wondering, maybe.
Although I have been known to kind of, like, a lot of boring tasks are fantastic for writing. People think that writing is just typing. Like, you know, how many words do you type a day? But that's only one. That's like the shark fin that you see up above the water. But all this other shit is going on down here. And doing boring stuff like a long drive. Incidentally, side note, I am coming to Canada on Thursday. I am driving to Vancouver. Yeah, well, you know, I thought about that. I thought, like, am I going to get across to Vancouver? And B, are they going to let me back in once I'm there?
Yeah, as long as you don't mind a strip search. There you go.
You know, I think that's kind of like a Tuesday for me. So, yeah, no big deal. I was like, yeah, what else is new? But yeah, no, long, boring tasks like a long drive or, you know, tidying or cleaning, those kind of things that don't require a lot of brain power, you know, they really do give you a way to work out things that have to happen under the surface before the typing starts.
Going through this whole series, and now that 3 books are out and it's done, you've let go of this voice in your head, so to speak. How does this process change you?
It feels almost like you wake up the next day after you turn the manuscript in, and you're like, oh, well, what do I do now? You know, like, this was so intimately close to me. It's like having a conjoined twin removed. You know, it's almost like a phantom limb for a little while. You can still feel it.
Yeah, you must feel like it's because you're so close to the character and the things that she's going through, you're in a way experiencing it, right? Like you're going through it with her.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing, too, because a lot of people love to ask me, like, oh, that's really you, right? That character, because she's like a sexy porn star, and they kind of want me to be that, too. You know, and so, and, you know, when I say they, we know who we're talking about. It's boys, mostly, unfortunately. And they have this fantasy that they want the writer to also be like this hot, big titty porn star. And it's like, yes, I've worked in the adult industry for decades, and I've been a sex worker. But Angel and I are very different. We are not the same person, not by a long shot. One of the big factors, at least for me, is that, you know, Angel is way more feminine than I have ever been, you know, and since I've been kind of taking some time in my life to re-examine my own relationship with gender, what is unfortunately a kind of deeply internalized femphobia on my part, you know, I've been thinking a lot about gender lately and kind of moving a little bit more towards the middle as I've gotten older. I was very much a tomboy as a kid. And then once I realized that you could have power by drag, you know, that you could put drag on and suddenly be this powerful dominatrix, I thought, wow, hey, you know, I guess being feminine doesn't have to be weak. So I can do this instead. And I did drag for decades with that in mind. But in my heart, I was always somewhere in between, you know. And now I feel like, as I've shed Angel Dare, who is an extremely feminine character through and through, inside and out, it's been kind of like, okay, well, that decades and decades and decades of high femme drag, I'm kind of burying that too with Angel. And that's been a complex journey for me personally.
Well, you sound so demure.
Look, I got no fucks left to give. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about menopause. All right, I was born almost fuckless. I had like 3 fucks. You know, now that I'm in menopause, I have like negative fucks. It's like 0. You would need like a electron microscope to see the one remaining fragment of a fuck that I give.
Oh, there you go. What is it you want a reader to get out of this? Is this pure entertainment, or is there something much deeper that you hope a reader picks up?
Well, I like to believe that it's choose your own adventure. You know, if you just want to be entertained, you can be. You know, you don't have to think deeply. Although I do feel like, particularly in The Get Off, it goes to some really, really dark places. I feel as if I had an arc from hard-boiled to noir, and the first book is pure hard-boiled. But as things progress down towards this final denouement in The Get Off, it got a lot darker and a lot more noirish. And I think this book is a little harder to read just as fun pulp. It could. I mean, I've had people review my books in the past, rave reviews, best book they ever read. They loved it. I didn't write that book that you're describing, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. I don't hold that against you. You have a contract with the reader, right? They experience what they experience, you experience what you experience, and you're kind of creating something together. It's never one way. So they bring their biases, expectations, you know, sort of the architecture of their own culture experience and their feelings about, you know, the issues that I discuss in the books. They bring all that baggage with them. What they walk away with from these books isn't going to be the same for each person. And it's definitely not always what I intended.
Do you think that I'm sort of forming a question here because I think it's related to research, but also your desire to kind of move beyond Angel Dare. Because I remember you telling me that this was really hard research to do, not just because it's rigorous, but you were actually going and hanging out in a very sort of gendered place. Do you think that's playing into sort of this process? I mean, I guess I'm wondering how much the research formed the dark arc of the books, or particularly this book.
In a way it did, but in other ways not, because when I worked on Chokehold, you know, I got my ass handed to me by a 12-year-old at the MMA gym because I wanted to roll with some fighters and feel what that felt like, you know, and so I definitely put myself out there when I do my research. But the difference here was the amount of time that passed, because I was doing the research that I was doing in 2012. 2012 was a different world back then, you know, and there, of course there was this kind of baked in misogyny and racism and homophobia. It was always there, but it's nothing like it is now. I could not have done the research that I did then today, because back then it was just like, oh, you know, she's a New Yorker. So don't mind her, you know, but now it would have been a whole nother ball of wax. It's definitely complicated, and you definitely, at least for me, I tend to put myself physically in the space with people who I want to learn about, because fuck Wikipedia, right? Like, you know, the library is great, don't get me wrong, but I need to meet people. I need to talk to people. I need to smell people. I don't just want to hear what they have to say. I want to think about what they're not saying. You know, I want to see how they interact with each other. I want to see how they interact with me and how they construct their personas in front of me, rather than, you know, when they're just among each other and not really paying attention, and I can kind of be a fly on the wall. So all of those tools in my research toolbox have all shaped the book that I ultimately wrote. But I decided, it was just a deliberate decision on my part, I decided to set that novel in 2012 because Angel is pregnant in this novel, and she gets pregnant at the end of Chokehold, right? So we're basically looking at a 9-month timeline. That's it. You can't go any longer than that. It made sense for me to write it as if it were taking place a few months after the inciting event, shall we say, P&V event that happened, that caused this situation. But yeah, and so ultimately, I think that it would be such a different book today that it would take away from the story I was trying to tell, because of all this political baggage and all these cultural schisms and all this ideas that people have about who's on your team and who isn't, and, who's safe and who isn't, and, insider, outsider, all of that stuff would have brought a unnecessary weight to what I thought should have been a story more focused on her journey and less on the politics that we're dealing with today.
Yeah, that's amazing that times have changed so much in a really relatively short amount of time. But I certainly agree.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Angel Adair is a sex worker, and that's definitely been a topic this year with Anora, and I know you've written a few things in Anora as well, and lots of different responses to this film, getting to be the best film. I know you're also a film buff. I'm dying to ask what you thought of Anora, and where do you think it falls in that conversation about sex work?
Boy, how long have you got? Because I got some opinion.
I like opinion.
Capital O.
I know Al does too.
But here's the thing, though. I mean, again, when you are interacting with art, visual art, movies, music, whatever, people's experiences are valid. The way that people experience a piece of art is valid, even if it isn't the way that I experienced it. And, I have a really close friend who's another film buff, Jen Johan, and she loved it. She loved it. Not only did she love it, but she felt a very deeply personal resonance with that character that I did not feel. And I would never think for a second to invalidate the experience that she had watching that film, because that was a powerful moment for her, and it really gave her some kind of language to talk about what she'd been through and experiences that she had had. But my feeling about Anora, in a nutshell, is that it felt very much like Kids, or what's the one that came after that guy who, Harmony Korine, is that his name? He does those films about adolescence that are like really sexually graphic.
Yeah, I remember Kids very well.
What was the one after that? The one with Brad Renfro? Anyway, this is oatmeal up here. I got nothing. But that, you felt a sort of a pervy, like you could see the director's boner in the frame, and you kind of want to like push it out of the way so that you could see the real story. And I felt like with Anora, there was a distance. And other people didn't feel this, but I did. I didn't feel like I was in her head. I felt like I was watching somebody put her through these things because it was funny. The entire scene where she is tied up and threatened, she doesn't know who these guys are. They might murder her, but her fear and her anger is sort of viewed as cute or like funny. There's like comedic beats where, she lashes out and it's like, oh, like a chihuahua bit me. It's cute. But you don't feel what you're not in her head in that scene. And I felt like a lot of the movie was that sort of arm's length, which I think is maybe a filmmaker issue. That's that sort of Kubrick, like, whose point of view is that looking at the spaceship? Well, it's my point of view. That's a famous Kubrick quote. And I felt a little bit of that, that there was that sort of distance where you're not putting the audience inside this woman's head.
Yeah, I think you're right. It definitely is a film that keeps you at arm's length from that character. It has that. I'm not so sure we're not seeing her through the eyes of her various lovers.
Exactly.
The rotten one and the kind one, but it is kind of through their eyes, really, is the film.
Yeah, and just the way that her body is displayed in every shot, and the way that you kind of sexualize her, the way what she's wearing and how she's posed. The example that I always give when I talk about this is, did you ever see the TV adaptation of Megan Abbott's Dare Me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so do you remember the scene where Beth is dancing on the table in front of all the soldiers? and she's
Yeah.
had way too much to drink, and she's a teenage cheerleader in a little short skirt, and she's up on the table doing a sexy dance for these group of young guys. And
Right,
if you
yeah.
would have given that scene to a man to direct, it would have been a completely different scene. It would have been very sexualized. You would have a lot of upskirt shots. It would have been more about her body from a distance. But because they had a female cinematographer on that scene, right? It was up close and intimate. So you were inside her head while she was going through that. You know, that delirious, I might throw up, but yet this is kind of dangerous and titillating. You were her in that scene, and you felt what she was feeling. And that's what I wanted from Anora. And I didn't get it. I got this very arm's length. And that director, again, Oatmeal, I apologize, I can't remember his name, but I loved his movie Tangerine. I thought Tangerine was brilliant. So I was going into this like ready to love it. And it just was felt off to me. It was just like a sour note, or like some component of a recipe was, you know, maybe about to go off and just gave it a strange taste. Just didn't go down well with me.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Yeah, I think that I felt complexly about it too. Like, I love certain elements to it, but it did feel at an arm's length. This is the beauty of fiction, is that, you know, especially first person point of view, is we're in you know, Angel Dare's head, right? It's not mitigated by some onlooker's choices, and certainly film could make that happen too. But I think that's one of the things, is that you have to be careful, or you may end up, you know, the story may be more about the gaze than about the subject. So
Exactly. And I also think that, you know, a lot of people want to use sex workers as furniture or as symbols for edginess, rather than allowing them to be fully realized, flawed, messy, real human beings.
So what's next? So what's going to happen now? Are you going to go into romance, or what's next?
Well,
for you?
I got a hot side piece waiting for me at the Motel 6. So, you know, I have one of these ideas that has been sort of titillating me throughout trying to finish this, has kind of now got my attention, and I'm not at liberty to discuss. I'm not aware of any such mission, and if I were, I would not discuss said mission. But yeah, no, what I will say is I have fallen down a new rabbit hole, and that's what I do. I fall in love with worlds, you know, these kind of hidden, weird, quirky worlds, whether it's a job or a hobby. You know, people have these demi-mondes that they move in, and they are hidden from outsiders. And there's stuff going on in there that if you're not a part of it, you don't know what it is. Whenever I find something like that, it takes me right down the rabbit hole. So I'm down a new rabbit hole. That's all I'll say.
yay.
Well, don't break a leg down.
Oh no, I'm a professional. Okay, don't try this at home.
Well, so now's the point where we come to ask, do you like readers to interact with you? Do you like interacting with people that are fans or maybe not fans, all that sort of stuff? Do you do website, social media? Like, where do people get a hold of you?
Well, I mean, social media is so strange now. It feels very fragmented, and it's become harder and harder because of the splintering. I'm not going to evoke that South African, you know, little Lord Fauntleroy with his apartheid emeralds, but you know who I mean, that guy. It's been a problem. And so that really shattered what used to feel like a kind of comfortable living room where you could chat and hang out with people who love stuff. And I have always been a reader first and a writer second, you know, and I'm not good at using social media as a hustle tool. I kind of suck at that, you know, but I love talking about books and movies, you know, and I love talking about, you know, whatever the topic of the day is. Sure, I'll talk about it. I have a lot of enthusiasm and I want to share it. I love meeting people who are like me, who, you know, are interested in the same kind of things that I'm interested in. But I also think there's this very scary parasocial thing that is happening now that didn't used to happen back in the day, where people are making you their whole personality, and then they feel not only a sense of ownership over you, but they get very, very angry when you don't deliver exactly what they require from you, or not enough of it, or not the way that they want it, So I would say yes and no to both. I love interacting with fans because fans are fans of things that I'm fans of, and I love going, oh my God, did you see that stuff? That was so good. Or, oh, this new book, it's amazing. Hall of Mirrors, that John Copenhaver. Oh, him. Yeah, I was into him before he was cool. Like that kind of thing where you can be happy and excited about stuff you love and share that with other people all day. But when it comes to having to sort of like perform this reality show that is then going to be picked apart and critiqued, and if it doesn't deliver exactly the type of storyline that the viewer would like to happen in their feed, then they become very angry and hostile. And that's not so fun. Plus, A, being a woman on the internet, B, being a queer woman on the internet, just existing in that space makes a lot of boys really, really mad. I get a lot of hate mail about, why do you have to stuff that gay agenda down my throat? And I'm like, honey, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Why are we talking about shoving things down people's throats? Why do they always say that? It's like...
We know why.
I mean, is this a projection? Like, this is what you want me to do to you? Because I have a strap on in the back, and we can just go to it right now. But...
Oh, my nipples are hard. Settle down.
I'm getting the vapors. I got menopause. Don't make me sweaty.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not doing well on X.
I have not deactivated that account, but I do not update it. Yeah.
Oh, I got off.
And
that was that one.
I know I should, but I'm kind of leaving it as a stub, in case anything changes in the future. But I'm really struggling with this division, because where do you put your energy, and how do you stay energetic for 7 copies of the same post? You have to kind of spray them out on all these different vectors, and maybe this one will hit on Blue Sky, and this one will go viral on, I don't know, Mastodon, and then Facebook, that's where you're going to connect most directly with readers. So it leaves you feeling like, I don't know, like I joke with a lot of friends that do like multiple intimate relationships, sort of poly adjacent type of people. And it's like anybody who looks at a poly relationship from the outside is like, wow, you must have the best time. You just must be fucking all the time. And in reality, it's like, fuck, I'm like spinning all these plates. You got to manage all these different things. And in a weird way, that's what social media feels like now. Is it feels like trying to have this deep, personal, intimate relationship with 8 different people. And there's always going to be the runt who gets left out. Sorry, Mastodon.
Yeah. No, I know. It's over time. You just get tired of doing all of them. So, yeah, well, here we are. We're here.
Indeed.
We're queer. Get used to it. Well, there you go. So, the Get Off. Everyone, you need to buy it.
It's so great.
Christa needs it. She needs the money. She's in menopause, and she's escaping to Canada. So
that's right. I need more money for fans.
There you have it. Wonderful. Thanks for coming by and being on the show.
All right, you crazy kids. Well, I appreciate the invite, and it's been a real pleasure.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.